opening the center immediately, staking a claim for crucial central squares and preparing rapid development. Instantly contesting the center's influence, the knight bravely occupies a vital outpost, aiming to disrupt white's initial spatial advantage. Developing the knight further solidifies central control and prepares castling, offering a flexible platform for future pawn advances or piece repositioning. A premature pawn push, potentially weakening dark squares for the queenside. Asserting central dominion now, c4 actively contests black's queenside expansion and prepares a pawn storm. Prepares to fianchetto the queen's bishop, aiming to control the long diagonal and challenge white's central space. Preparing a kingside fianchetto, white aims to bolster their queenside control and restrict black's bishop on b7. Developing the bishop to a robust diagonal, this piece eyes the queenside, preparing for a solid defensive setup and potential counterplay. Developing the bishop to its ideal diagonal enhances kingside control and prepares for central pawn pushes. Asserting central space now is a bold bid for initiative, aiming to disrupt white's developing harmony. Instantly challenging black's central pawn structure, this knight maneuver injects immediate dynamism, aiming to exploit the d5 pawn's potential weakness. Confronting the knight immediately forces a decision, challenging white's central claim and opening diagonals. Bolstering the knight's outpost, white solidifies central control and prepares for potential kingside expansion. Trading off the bishop clears lines and simplifies, but it grants white a strong outpost on e5. Opening the diagonal for your queen, this recapture immediately challenges black's center and clears the way for active piece play. Securing the monarch initiates a more flexible setup for piece development. Asserting control over the c-file, white prepares to challenge black's central pawn structure and potentially pressure the queen's bishop's diagonal. Developing this knight to d7 solidifies the center and prepares for a potential pawn push on e5, while also eyeing the queenside for future activity. Unbalancing the pawn structure to initiate piece exchanges clears the way for potential central advances. Reclaiming the pawn solidifies the central structure, but frees up white's knight for more active play. Pushing the pawn like this creates an advanced outpost for your knight, but weakens the queenside pawn structure. Unleashing the queen to contest the long diagonal and prepare for pawn structure disruption. Targeting the queen with tempo forces black to reposition, potentially disrupting their queenside development and giving white a chance to consolidate. Shifting the queen to the queenside targets the advanced c5 pawn, aiming to disrupt white's central control. Reinforcing the c5 pawn creates a formidable central barrier, potentially strangling black's queenside play and preparing for a kingside assault. Sacrificing pawn structure for a material advantage, opening lines now could quickly backfire on the queenside. Disrupting black's pawn chain with this incision opens a crucial file for your rook and gains vital space. Retreating the bishop opens lines, but abandons crucial central control. Expanding the queenside pawn chain to solidify control of the central dark squares. That queen now dances precariously, exposing itself to white's impending pawn storm on the queenside. Fortifying the queenside expansion, this maneuver prepares to clamp down on black's exposed monarch with aggressive piece play. Navigating a precarious queenside, black retreats the queen to avoid further disruption, aiming to consolidate the somewhat exposed position. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure, preparing for future pawn advances or piece deployment. A bold knight sortie, challenging white's central pawn chain and potentially forcing concessions. Trading off the knight opens the e-file, creating potential pressure against black's castled king. Opening the e-file dramatically challenges white's central pawn structure. Seizing the initiative, white aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and open lines toward the king. Opening a diagonal for the queen while contesting the c-file looks promising. Opening the b-file now reclaims the pawn and creates immediate threats against black's queenside structure. Reclaiming the pawn, black opens the b-file for potential pressure, but sacrifices crucial central space and pawn structure integrity. This bishop maneuver aims to secure the pawn structure and prepare for potential piece activity on the queen side. Unleashing a rook-hunting queen, black aims to disrupt white's queenside expansion and exploit the pinned pawn, creating immediate tactical complications. Castling here shores up the king and activates the rook to eye the open c-file, a sensible defensive and offensive repositioning. Unleashing a daring queen sortie creates immediate pressure, but neglects central development and king safety. Clearing the path for the rook to dominate the c-file, aiming to exploit the weakened queenside. Black aggressively pushes the passed pawn, aiming to disrupt white's queenside pawns and create complications before the king's safety can be fully secured. Reclaiming central influence with the queen is crucial, aiming to disrupt black's queenside advances and prepare for counterplay. Challenging the central pawns with f5 aims to unlock the king's diagonal and create dynamic counterplay. Recapturing the pawn opens the file for an immediate assault on black's queenside weakness. This capture unleashes central pawns and frees the rook, aiming to exploit white's exposed king. The queens clash, instantly simplifying the complex board and initiating an endgame phase where pawn structure becomes paramount. Unleashing a pawn storm invites chaos, hoping to disrupt white's centralized pieces and create mating chances. Recapturing the pawn tidies up the queenside, preparing to contest the now open c-file and activate the rook. Opening the kingside pawn shield dramatically alters the tactical landscape, inviting sharp play. Unleashing the queen after sacrificing material simplifies the attack on black's exposed king. Reclaiming the pawn solidifies black's central presence and opens clear lines for attacking the weakened white king. Opening the kingside file now, white aims to exploit the exposed black monarch through aggressive pawn thrusts. Consolidating the rook on the open file offers a renewed challenge for white's king. Dominating the open file becomes the priority now, aiming to put pressure on black's remaining defenses. Preparing to challenge the open g-file and potentially disrupt white's rook battery. Activating the rook to its most potent file promises an assault on black's queenside pawns. Reasserting the rook to the 7th rank aims to sever white's kingside presence and prepare for an eventual attack on the king. Unlocking the c4 square allows the bishop to join the attack, aiming for squares near the vulnerable black king. Prioritizing king safety amidst potential threats on the king side becomes paramount now. Centering the monarch anticipates potential checks and prepares for future pawn advances. Initiating a rook exchange could simplify into a more manageable endgame for black's king. Centering the king prepares for the eventual endgame, solidifying the monarch's position. The king cautiously seeks an open square, aiming to support the central pawn push and activate its own pieces. Unlocking the e-file for the rook creates immediate threats and aims to dismantle black's kingside. Opening the e-file dramatically simplifies, leading to a crucial pawn endgame where mobility becomes paramount. Unlocking the central expanse, this push aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and seize the initiative. Injecting the bishop to the center strengthens the queen's protection and prepares a future kingside pawn advance. Activating the bishop to pressure the weakened dark squares on the queen's side. Creating a safe haven for the monarch is paramount, as a weak king can unravel even the most promising position. Opening the d-file offers a clear pathway to the black king's position. Opening the c-file offers immense counterplay, yet surrendering the d-file is a significant positional concession. Seizing the open file, the rook dismantles black's pawn structure and prepares for a decisive endgame. Securing the king's central presence offers a proactive defense against white's advancing pawns. Introducing a decisive passed pawn, the white king's safety is now the paramount concern. Desperate attempts to activate the isolated d-pawn are met with a swift and decisive pawn break, opening the door to a winning queen exchange for white. Clearing the d-file immediately opens lines for the rook, a crucial step towards promoting the passed pawn. Challenging the isolated pawn, black aims to disrupt white's consolidated central structure and open lines. Unleashing a new queen instantly disrupts the pawn's structure and creates unstoppable threats. Exchanging the bishop for the pawn strategically sacrifices material to simplify into a winning queen and pawn endgame, though it allows the white queen to penetrate deeper. The bishop swap finally clears the way for the c-pawn to advance, a decisive positional breakthrough. The black king becomes dangerously exposed, inviting a swift attack by the white monarch. The monarch embarks on a perilous journey across the center, seeking a safer haven amidst the remaining pawns. Activating the king to support its pawns and challenge the enemy rook is a key endgame strategy. Repositioning the king to a more active central square now prepares for an aggressive pawn push.